At the store, there's a step up, and she stumbled and fell through a plate glass window, broke her hip, and she went through a pretty rough time there replacing her hip. She never got over it. She died at 84.
When was that? What year?
When I came back here in 74, and it was about around 1980, somewhere along in there.
Okay.
I'd have to figure up her age and all. But then my dad lived to be 89.
We were trying to get George to come over and do this as a team. Of course, he's being the district public defender. He's kind of busy in that regard. But you worked with his father, right?
Yeah, his father was a night chief dispatcher at the old Union Station for years. And then when the diesels came along, his father was real smart. That's where George got his smarts, I'm sure. But anyway, he took over the job of taking care of the motive power. It had to be watched real close. You'd get too much power at one end of the road, you wouldn't have anything to move tonnage at the other end. And he kept up with every diesel that they had, and condition, running condition and all, if it was in the shop being repaired. But that wound up, he had an office just full time doing that. And I can't remember, I think maybe George retired while I was train master. I'm not just sure when he retired.
Now, George is this his father's name was George as well?
Yeah.
So is George Googe that we know the junior?
Yeah, I'm sure, yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure he is.
Now, he worked for the railroad for a little while, didn't he?
Yeah, when he was going to college, he worked down at Island as an operator. I remember him well working down there.
Were you still on the railroad then?
Oh yeah, I was working.
But you were up in the upper echelons by this point, right? You were already a train master by then?
No, I don't think I don't know what year it was that he worked.
Mm-hmm.
I accepted a position as train master in '66. And I come back here in '74. Because of the IC merger, I resigned. The merger was in '72. And
You resigned as
train master and came back on my seniority at Jackson.
Doing what?
As a conductor.
Uh-huh.
Because after the IC had taken over, they made up some runs that paid off big money.
Okay.
To give you an idea, back when I retired, I was on a run that had paid around $5,000 a month. But it was like from Memphis to Centray, Illinois, a pig run.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of miles. And then the IC never did give me a raise as train master, and they was running me ragged. And they was taking care of their people. Of course, they were supposed to take care of us, but they didn't.
They were taking care of the guys that were with them before the merger.
Yeah.
And screwing the guys that come from GM&O.
Absolutely. And so, and then they started cutting our trains off too, up there. And they took my office away from me at Murfreesboro. I had two big offices, two big rooms, two secretaries that did everything for me, as far writing letters and keeping filing and everything, and records of investigations and all that. Well, when the IC took over, wasn't but a few months, they moved me up to Sparta in a waiting room in the depot. Now Sparta, the depot's still there, and it's a museum now.
Because it was the Sparta that was supposed to be Sparta, Mississippi, but they used it in
the movie,
heat of the night.
Heat of the night. And a lot of it was filmed right there in Sparta, Illinois.
Mm-hmm. That's what I remember. Well, I mean, the GM&O had the Rebel. Was it the Gulf Coast Rebel in the movie at the first?
That's what I worked on. When Sidney Poitier got on the train there, well, I worked on that train. And
you weren't there when they filmed that, were you?
No,
they had filmed it
right after that.
Oh, okay.
They filmed it in the early '60s.
Do you remember that movie being a hit then, or did
yeah,
it wasn't?
Much so.
Everybody liked it.
Yeah.
Do you remember this? Did you go see it?
I'm not sure whether I did or not. I don't believe.
Do you remember the premise of the movie? Sidney Poitier, he was a police officer, and they thought.
Oh gosh, yeah, I've seen it several times.
Do you remember the part where he's in the flat? He's at the guy's house who he thinks might have done it, and he's doing something with flowers. He's a horticulturist.
Yeah.
And he says something to him, and because he thinks Sidney Poitier is accusing him of killing the guy, he slaps Sidney Poitier, and then immediately Sidney Poitier slaps him back.
Yeah.
Do you remember that part?
Oh, yeah.
Did that get a laugh out of people, or was that?
Do you remember when he was in this old roundhouse, and he jumped across this pit where they parked the engines?
Right.
And he had a
chain
or something, and he
fighting some guys off.
Those men.
Well,
that was an old abandoned roundhouse right there in the edge of Sparta, close to the city dump out there. I've been in it. I've seen it, but it wasn't in use. They fixed it up then. It wasn't in use then.
What the roundhouse was basically where they would keep originally steam locomotives, and they could bring them out.
You should have seen the roundhouse at Island. Now, when I went to work, they had a turntable. It was motorized, and an engine could run out on this turntable and stop, and then there's tracks running into the roundhouse. The roundhouse was made around like that, and they could put 10 or 15 engines in the roundhouse and work on it. And they'd run up on that turntable and turn it to whatever track they wanted to use, and run it in there.
But what brought about the decline of turntables? Because, I mean, they obviously don't use them anymore.
Well, diesels, they run them in either direction.
Right, okay.
And they had a Y. They built a Y just below the old back shop where a engine could run in here and then come out this way and turn them.
Okay.
And if they wanted to turn the engine, they just run around the Y and turn it. So they took it out and filled up the base where the turntable was.
It was cost less to maintain a Y than it did a turntable, I imagine.
Oh yeah, it's just a track and a switch,
You made mention, I know I'm skipping around here, you made mention about having been coming close to having your legs taken off one time because you jumped off to grab something and you've tripped. Have you, what's something, and I know this sounds morbid, but I'm trying to think of things that might have been exciting at that time. Were you ever privy to accidents and saw the result of them, or anything like that, or were you lucky not to ever see anything or be involved with it?
Well, I've seen a lot of hit cars, and people hurt pretty bad, and taken to the hospital. But I found people on the track with all cut up, the body parts laying around.
From previous trains or from the train you were on?
Well, when I was train master, hobos would ride those coal cars, and we had 2 or 3 killed up around Percy there. And it never ceased to amaze me when they undertakers would come and pick those bodies up. They'd like there'd be some brains laying between the ties. They didn't leave anything. They had instruments to scoop or pick up all that
Wow.
and put it in a container. But yeah.
Was there ever a hobo that was like a pretty regular guy you would see a lot, or they were just strangers you would see come and go?
Yeah, I can tell you about one that lived in Humboldt, but he loved to ride the train. He was a tall, slim black man,
Mm-hmm.
and he could get on and off a train as fast as any brakeman I ever saw. Well, we'd pick up at Reeves every day coming out of Union City. The IC would make a big delivery there. Sometimes we'd pick up 40 or 50 cars there. And a lot of times, a lot of empty refrigerator cars, banana cars. And we'd always store them at Rutherford in the passing track for through freight to pick up. But anyway, when we would pick up there, nearly all the time I was a swing man, what they call a swing man. I classified the train right there at Reeves. Like if we had cars for Kennan, I'd have them first out, then Rutherford, then Dyer,
Mm-hmm.
then Trenton, and then Humboldt. And then the through tonnage that we would line up for through freight at Humboldt. But when we get through there, that old 1507, that picture right there, she was a horse, man. If I had we've left Reeves a lot of time with 100 cars, and she'd grunt a couple of times, man, she'd gone. Well, one day, and by the way, this Leo Archie's a good friend of mine. He's dead now, but he was an engineer on there. He let me run the engine all the time. He said, "Get over here and run, man." But I saw this black guy up there. We was light that particular day. I saw him up there, and I knew he was going to catch the train to ride to Humboldt.
Mm-hmm.
So I slept her back to the peg. We passed him. I know we're doing 30 miles an hour. I said, he won't get over here today. He's gone. He hit that train.
He grabbed for it?
He slapped it, and it knocked him broke. But he didn't get under it. It cleared him, but he missed it.
Like,
and I always felt bad about it, leaving him there.
See, even though you were going over 30, he went to grab to get on, and when
he grabbed it and slapped up against the car and then lost his hold, and it went out across down the dump. But I've seen him get on fast, maybe 20 miles an hour.
Oh, this guy that got thrown off, he was the one that could get on a fast train, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you proved he could get on that train.
He just liked to ride them. Yeah. Yeah, we left him there.
Do you think you ever, would you consider yourself as having a mean streak sometimes?
Well, I felt sorry for him, but that's all he ever done. He'd ride from Humboldt up there and hang around and ride back.
Unless you were the one driving the train and you slam it in high gear and leave him.
Well, he's usually smart enough that he got on before the speed got up.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But he wasn't expecting us to be going that fast when
I can imagine that, and he survived, but it's pretty funny. I gotta admit. Oh, man.
I was pretty active when I was young. Worked on through freight. We had a fellow named Bob Camel, and he was a wild engineer, good engineer, but he was wild. And he put too much confidence in me. I can give you an example of things that I used to do. It's unbelievable. We've come to Humboldt and cut off at the L&N crossing. And I'd pick up off of the Y.